Well, folks, welcome to my next installment of the joys of my Folger FT-6 3D printer. This has been sitting here for about 3 months unused because I haven't had time to work on it, and I did finally go through and basically redo the countersink on all the holes on the bed. And I basically did that in place just with the pulling a screw out at a time and very slowly working the countersink until I got just the right depth because I didn't want to overdo it. But what I needed to do after getting that all straightened out was there was a few chips that had gone through the hole that I wanted to clean off of the white part underneath the bed. And as I peeked underneath, I noticed that my heater appeared to be sagging off the bed. So I pulled it off, and sure enough, it's not attached. And even more fascinating is apparently this is a purchased part, but rather than using, so it comes with a 3M sticky layer on it, and somebody got the bright idea to glue to the paper backing of the 3M product. This is just a fascinating discovery, and I will be interested to know what Folger Tech has to say about it. Alright, so what looked like glue when I was looking at this upside down is simply where the heater coils actually managed to melt the plastic that makes up or wax or whatever it is that makes up the surface of this 3M material. So you can actually see the heater coil shape embedded in this. What that means is that this scrap of paper, basically when they peeled the surface off, it ripped and they left half of it on there and shipped it that way. So it was never actually adhered at all. And so the unfortunate side effect of that is that there are places, like you can see right here, where this never actually adhered down to the bed to begin with, and so air got to the adhesive layer. And similarly here at this corner, where unfortunately it probably will never stick. I just hope that the rest of it's good enough and will adhere so that it will stay on. So we're hoping that 3M product is better than the installers. And of course before I did this, I'd attempted to contact Folger Tech, and they were relatively non-committal about, just take the paper off. I'd love for them to say, whoops, sorry, we screwed up, we won't do it again. Anyway, so I'm going to put this back together, and then I'll show you what I had to go through with the countersinking, and we'll go from there. Alright, so originally my plan was to start with this part of the video talking about how I had countersunk all of the screw heads. And basically I did this very slowly, just taking off a very little bit at a time because I didn't want to overdo the bore on these. The interesting thing I found when I did the countersink is that apparently the screws on this side, basically the feed side, the holes in the base appear to be slightly off. So these screws are going at just a tight, slight amount of angle, which meant that I had to countersink that quite a bit more to be able to get that flush because the head was at an angle. Now, of course, I had to go back and double check all of this, and I'll still have to retension everything after having to fix the heater. But basically what I did as a check as I did these is took a razor and just confirm that I can drag across these holes now without feeling any thing happen. So I'm not hitting the head and there aren't any burrs on the holes. And so that ensured that I had good clearance there. One more final comment on the heater. If you recall from my temperature test video, I started at this end of the bed and was going back and forth, and then just said, well, I could just do a quarter of it. Well, of course, this is the quarter that I didn't come even close to measuring anything, and this is where it failed. So it would have been very interesting had I done that profile and seen what was happening here. I probably would have detected that was falling off at that point. But unfortunately, I didn't do that. So anyway, so like I say, now these are flush, and I can actually show you the next thing that I'm doing with this. Now, I had mentioned previously how I didn't like the idea of printing directly on the aluminum bed because, this printer being this large, trying to get a large part off of it, structurally, this thing's not going to take a whole lot of force trying to get something loose. So originally I was thinking, well, okay, once I got the bed flat, I'd get a piece of glass and print to glass, because that's what I'm used to printing on with my Robo 3D, and generally that works quite nicely. But that would have meant doing something different than the inductive sensor that we have that this comes with. And while I did get a touch sensor I was going to use, I realized, well, we do a lot of work with aluminum and all sorts of other stuff. So I went back and dug through the scrap bin in the shop, found myself a sheet, cut it to size, and lo and behold, now I have a removable top that will let me print out pretty much as far as I can to the edge, certainly well past the heated portion. And the only thing I now have are the little clips that would be the limit to how far out I can print. But this means that if I print something too large, I can now take and just remove the whole top, pop the part off of that. If I screw up the aluminum plate, I get a new aluminum plate, but I don't completely destroy my printer. And hopefully, while there's of course no thermal compound or anything, hopefully the heat transfer between the bottom aluminum plate and the top aluminum plate is good enough that won't be an issue. Worst case, just have to run a little hotter to begin with. So that's my solution for that.